You know the midrash to who? Before Esau. Who do you get him from? Nimrod. The mighty hunter is the one who inherits these, and he becomes a mighty hunter because he inherits these garments. And then, as you remember in the midrash, he ends up fighting a duel with Esau. And Esau kills him and takes the garments. And then he becomes the mighty hunter. Gibor, Tzayid, a hero of the hunt, is the same terminology that the Torah uses. This might be the preservation of a very old tradition, of a memory of a hunter-gatherer society. Go ahead.
I was going to say that Yitzchak, it says, the midrash, I believe, says that Yitzchak, why he liked Esau better than Yaakov was there was the smell of Gan Eden on the clothes.
Well, when you're blind, maybe you like the child that smells best. That might be something to that. But yeah, there was a scent to these clothes. Okay. In the next generation, as we're trying to explain why are things the way they are in the creation myth, the next generation is the division between the herdsman and the dirt farmer. And of course, there is a clear disposition throughout this text for the herdsman and against the dirt farmer. In this case, the dirt farmer, Cain, is jealous and treacherous, and finally, murderous. And the herdsman is all virtue. He is pious, he is righteous, he is honest, he is good, and he is the victim of Cain's murder. Cain slays Abel, the herdsman. It is possible, in light of new discoveries, to see where this disposition came from, even to see where we see in the Torah the great hatred for the Canaanite that is there, the identification of the Canaanite as the other, when it seems relatively clear now that historically we are all from one and the same stock. We are the Phoenicians, Carthaginians, the Puny. This is all the same people that we are, speaking exactly the same language. We're the Canaanites. That's who our ancestors were. Scary, it kills Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny for a lot of us, but that's who we came from. Now, what divides Canaanite from Israelite, and what made an Israelite might be lifestyle rather than ethnic descent. It is possibly as simple as, although every oversimplification such as the one I'm about to make is necessarily open to inaccuracies, but it might be as simple as the Canaanites are the folks who lived in the cities, and the Israelites were the folks who lived out in the countryside. That might be the simple difference between them. How they got there is debated right now. Some saying that people were expelled from the cities. Others saying that the population increased in the mountains and that they came down towards the plain and there were a lot of nomads hanging out by the cities at this time. Not quite sure. But it fits in with the accounts in Joshua. It fits in with the Judges, with a creative reading. It fits in with the archaeological record. And it fits in with the Bible's predisposition. It doesn't like people who live in cities. It doesn't like people who have settled in farms. Of course, it doesn't really dislike them because it's addressing people that have already adopted that lifestyle. But it is remembering a time when those people were the enemy and the herdsman was identified as an Israelite, was a nomadic herdsman, and they are given all the virtue. Our nomadic herdsmen include, besides Abel, all the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, Moses, David. They were all good little herdsmen. When we read consistently in Joshua and Judges of the origin of our Canaanite enemies, they are all associated specifically with city place names, with urban place names, constantly. Questions or comments so far? Go ahead.
As our patriarchs became leaders of flocks, is that perhaps why they are more revered?
Well, there's the story in the midrash of Moses, that Moses is tending his flocks one day, and a little lamb runs away to go get some water, and what a herdsman is supposed to do is sort of, beat the lamb back into the flock there, and he lets the lamb drink, and then he carries the lamb on his own shoulders. In the midrash, it says that this is the threshing floor of leaders, so to speak, that leaders of men first train on animals. It's an interesting concept. I think that's how medical schools started doing it that way. No, if you make a mistake on the cadaver, it's still just a cadaver. Now, I think the idea is that you learn compassion from being a herdsman. There is still this concept, very overt in, we'll call it Christian mythology, of the concept of Jesus as a shepherd, which clearly in the text he never was. He never was. But what is this good shepherd? And why is a minister or a priest called a pastor? You know, this is all because there is this same vision that you take care of, just as you said, your flock. And that by taking care of animals and showing compassion to animals and, so to speak, leading animals properly or being responsible for animals, that will be the training ground to learn how to be responsible for fellow humans. Any other questions or comments on this? Now, we also have a political situation that exists at the time, at least when the Torah is popularized. It is a time when there is a monarchy, but it is not necessarily a universally accepted monarchy, and there is a division. There is a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. And we have in the Torah a lot of hints going back and forth to a division of the people. So in the final generation of patriarchs, after we have come to the origin of other nations, we've developed the Edomites and Amalekites from Esau. We have Ammon and Moab coming from Lot as an incestuous relationship that Abraham's nephew had. We have Midian and other nations coming from Abraham and his concubine. We have Ishmael, another concubine's child, fathering other nations. So the origin of these other peoples is explained along with Israel. Some of them in the most contemptuous ways, like the Amalekites being descended from, rather the Canaanites being descended from cursed Ham, or in contemptuous ways like Ammon and Moab being the products of incest. We also have close relationships. The Midianites are good descendants. The Ishmaelites seem to have a respectful pedigree. The Edomites, it's really hard to knock them either. The Edomites are full brothers. And this is because they are incarnating as the Edomians at the time that the Torah is becoming popularized, and they are converting in great numbers. And a text that would show a close kinship would be a very positive thing. The Torah is catching the Israelites at a moment of, we might say, universalization, when they are becoming more cosmopolitan than they've ever been, and they have to now test and revise some of their old concepts of kinship and nationhood. The basis of unity of the nation in the Torah at its inception, when we read the early sections of the Torah, particularly the book of Genesis, and to a certain extent Exodus, and then it comes again for a little bit in Numbers, is about family and clan. Who's your daddy? It's got to be a pedigree, and you have to have a common descent, and we will go to great pains to create these genealogies. The title of Sheikh in the Islamic world is actually a religious title, and the title is supposed to be a descendant of Muhammad, of the Prophet. There are sheikhs in all parts of Africa, in Arabia, and in Western Asia. Interestingly, the Eastern Asian Muslims don't do quite the same things that the other Muslims do, which is invent all sorts of genealogies to create that they are descended from Muhammad and obliterate all the pre-Islamic history of their peoples. This is in great contradistinction to the European tradition, where Irish monks were the first, for instance, to set down pre-Christian Irish and Celtic mythology with great pride and great reverence, even though it was a pagan world that they're writing about, and it was all pre-Christian events that they're writing about. In the Islamic world, all of that they attempted to suppress in order to create a pedigree starting just from Muhammad and history beginning then, and the Hejirah is truly year one and all of that kind of stuff. We see these origins in the Torah where they provide, similar to the Sumerian and Akkadian king lists, they have these genealogy lists and tables scattered all throughout the Bible. At the same time, this Torah is being given just at a moment where links between people in a nation are not necessarily based on blood kinship. Disruptions that have occurred because of the Assyrian conquest, that have moved villages and their populations around and consolidated a lot of the nation in and around the city of Jerusalem itself, have broken up a lot of family ties and a lot of family lines. Contact with other nations has led to a certain amount of intermarriage, and there is now a bit of ambiguity about what really constitutes the nation. It's becoming something larger. It will be left to the prophets to develop it to the point where they talk about a belief system and a unity under God. The Torah is still struggling in that in-between.